Hey everyone, welcome back. It has been a minute since we've done a podcast episode, and we're excited to start bringing these back into the picture. There's been a lot of moving parts on our end from our chiropractic side. We just expanded into Maryville, and we're excited to bring the expertise of what we have for pediatrics, prenatal, chiropractic in general, from adult wellness perspective, family wellness, and so much more of what we offer. And so it's been a little bit of a planning out and trying to figure things out. A lot of moving parts. Some things fell through, but we're here. We are excited to be there, and we're excited to get back into the podcasting world to share some episodes to really help empower you as a mom, as a dad. Dads, don't forget, I'm not forgetting about you guys either. I work with 98% of the time moms, but it's one of those things to help empower and see the power of what chiropractic can actually do and what is it actually doing for kiddos and so much more. This topic has been something that I've been talking about on and off with, hearing stories through moms of their struggles that they had with their child when it comes to feeding, getting into talking to lactation consultants of what their challenges have been, what they see commonly, and educating and sharing when I work with professionals about what I do as a chiropractor, the approach I take, and how that plays a role in feeding and how we can help the success of that. Because this is really going to be more about this episode's gonna be if you're a mom who's dreading feeding time because latch issues, you got reflux, right? You do all this work to get them to feed, whether it's bottle or breastfeeding, and then all of a sudden, a little bit later, they're spitting it all up. I want you to know that you're not alone. I've dealt with a lot of moms with this, especially like I've worked with kids who've had failure to thrive. They spit up so much that nothing was staying down. Mom would be like, I breastfeed the kiddo, and then within a certain period of time later, it'll just all be spit up. Like there's nothing there. And they didn't gain pounds, and they get the diagnosis of this may be a failure to thrive situation. And they've tried medications for the reflux. They worked with lactation consultants and so much more. And then we got to the source of what is the root of why it's happening. And then I'll talk about how we recommended going back to a lactation consultant now, working with them on top of what we did and so much more. This is really, you never hear about how the spine and the skull, specifically the first bone in the neck and the skull, plays an important role in how it affects feeding, such as how it can be really smooth or it can be a huge battle, especially if you're breastfeeding and even bottle feeding. But breastfeeding, there's a little bit more that comes to that, such as like sore nipples. You can have mastitis, things like that can lead painful while feeding. They get tired when they're feeding on a breast and they fall asleep. I mean, these are some of the challenges that we'll hear. Sometimes you'll get like clicking when they're feeding. A lot of times I'll hear the fatigue where they'll just feed and then they just pass out. And they'll be like, I don't know, maybe they're just overly tired. I don't know. And I'll be like, nah, it might be, if there's a pattern to this, they're fatiguing out for a reason. Or they have difficulty with one side, they'll latch on one really well for breastfeeding and not on the other. There's variables to this, but it all will come down to understanding that this is very common. We see this often. These babies are coming into the world, and there's a lot of stress just through the birth process that is going to affect them. That's why I'm a big component of prenatal care for chiropractic, actually even before they're a thought, because it minimizes that stress. It minimizes the stress on mom and baby during the pregnancy and during the labor, which gives us better outcomes potentially in afterwards. And so we look at that, and then all of a sudden it's like, but we're seeing more and more feeding issues. And I've been seeing it on the rise. And as I'm talking and reestablishing relationship with other professionals in this space, I'm hearing more and more and more of this coming up. So I want you to know that you are not alone, okay? You're not alone at all when it comes to these things, but these are the kind of struggles that we hear. And it's always that shallow latch. They're not getting a good latch. You get the clicking, you get the reflux. So reflux can happen. They're spitting up. Like spit up is common. It's not that, sometimes, especially there's so many variables. If you breastfeed, there's so many variables to that, right? How's mom's letdown? Sometimes that could just be way too much. Okay. That all of a sudden baby just taking it in, but it's just too much happening too fast. So then it's overswells. It's like you overeating, not waiting for that reflex to kick in 15 to 20 minutes after you start eating. So you can know exactly how full you really are. and you're just like, I'm loving this. I'm stuffing my face. This is so amazing. Oh my God, just give me more, 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 more. And then about 30 minutes later, like, what did I do? Oh my God, I feel so sick. And you may even throw up if you really overstuffed yourself. Babies are the same way. Infants are the same way. If they're breastfeeding, you have a huge letdown, they're going to take that all in. Now, if they have a shallow latch or they're getting air in there because they're not latching on fully if they're breastfeeding, now all of a sudden you have air mixed with food, that's going to create a bigger projection out sometimes. And so there's a lot of variables to this when it comes to reflexes. There's silent reflex, there's active reflex. It's gotten so more complex in breaking it down into different ways. But at the end of the day, these are things that we'll see that happen, or the fatigue, right? Or they face, they'll, I'll hear it all the time. Baby feeds really, really well on this side, but the other side doesn't do that well. I just don't understand. And we're going to get into all this, and help in that process to kind of share. There's a story, and I wrote this out a little bit so that way I can really address this. But I had a mom who came in the office, and it was one of those things where I could just see her. She was exhausted, just totally exhausted, dark eyes, energy low, and feeling a little defeated. The voice and the tone didn't have confidence or certainty. It was more like hope, struggle. She's been beaten up with this, right? And she was like, feeding my newborn has been like a full-time just battle, right? She's like, every feeding, her boy would latch for a few seconds before popping off. He made like a ton of clicking noises when he was, constantly, no matter what position. She tried the football. She tried this. She was told all these different positions. None of them were working. Still had the clicking, and he would swallow a ton of air, end up screaming from the gas and the pressure afterwards, and be very, very uncomfortable. No matter how many times she tried to burp. She said it was just a vicious cycle, and it was just beating her up little at a time. And he would get frustrated. She ended up in tears. She just wanted him to feed. She just wanted him to be, help him. None of them are enjoying the process. And it was missing out on that beautiful bond moment that mom really needs, especially in postpartum. That whole baby mom, I know we're talking about breastfeeding here, but there is a connection there that is critically important for baby. And she was hoping, not getting that and what she wanted when it came to that process. She worked with lactation consultants. She tried every bottom nipple on the market, everyone that was recommended. She changed her whole diet. She pulled out dairy and gluten, all the things that are common, and not really holding to, like, she'll make a change and it seemed a little better and then went back. She'd make another change, this and this, and it seemed a little better and then went back. So she constantly was like trying so many things, getting burned out in the process, not seeing the results. But the biggest thing for her was how devastated and how her heart was broken and how she felt so defeated. And she started to think it was actually something wrong with her. Okay. And that's where I was just like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. I said, here's what you've been experiencing. Here's what you've been having going on. Here's the struggles that you've been facing. All we have to do is get to the root cause. Nervous system is where everything begins. It's what it gets affected 95% of the time. When a baby is born, there's going to have some sort of misalignment. And a lot of times it happens at the C1 vertebra. We were talking about this for a little bit because she's like, okay, what do you mean C1? Where is that? And so I kept explaining this and working through that. And we worked on some things. We did some other stuff. And I'm going to get into a little more specifics of all this and I'll relate back to the story. But long story short, we started to see a shift. And was she able to latch on better? Was her son able to latch on better? Absolutely. No more clicking or popping. Reflex was gone. All that stuff. It's pretty powerful stuff because, again, we talked about clicking or popping energy. What are signs to look for, right? Clicking or popping, fatigue during feeding, prefers one side of the breast, excess gassiness or reflex systems. These are issues that all start because it's related to the nervous system. When that C1, this would happen with this kiddo too, and I see this often, C1 was misaligned, right? There's an interference in the nervous system. The way you see this and the way it shows up in infants is you'll see they favor their head when they turn. When you lay them in the car seat, they'll turn this way a lot. You'll see them, they'll look to the left, or it could be to the right, but I'm just using the left as an example. When you're holding them, they'll look to the left. There's sometimes when you're holding them on one side, they will totally shift their whole head into you. When you go to the other side, they don't really turn into you much. These are just some certain signs of it. We call this an imbalance of neck tonicity. The muscles in the neck are imbalanced. There's an issue at C1, and this is what plays a huge role in a lot of this. There's neurological issues that can lead to this too. It can affect where if C1's not in a proper alignment, then it affects input to the brain, which stresses the nervous system more, because if you're not getting the good input, we put turned on stress on the nervous system. And so then this affects something called digestion. It can affect immune system. It can affect a variety of these things. But if you have a kid whose head's tilted like this and looking this way, jaw doesn't move as well. Now that plays a role. There's other things that happen in the suckle reflex. So there's things that C1 does not directly innervate, or which means control the suckle reflex, but C1 plays a huge role on the nerves that do control the suckle reflex. And the cranial nerves are called. So these are nerves that come right off the brain. And there's certain different ones. There's one for the tongue. There's one for, it's called cranial nerve. Cranial nerve 12 is the tongue. There's a trigeminal nerve, it's cranial nerve 5, facial 7. I won't bore you with all those details. But the thing is, these all play a role. So maybe the suckle reflex is not that strong. And sometimes I'll check babies and we'll notice that they suckle really well on one side and they don't do well on the other if I'm trying to activate each side to see. And sometimes there's a structural thing. Sometimes it's a high palate, right? We get into tongue ties, or you've had tongue ties revised but never had the cranial work done. There's so many variables of what to look at and how to approach. And when I work with kids, it's individual. I take them as they are, where they are in their journey. I don't tie it into other things because I have to look. Every kid's different, and they all have their own circumstance, how they handle stress, how their body's adapting, how much stress has been turned on, what's the approach that's needed, and then working through all that. So you get these kind of concepts, but this is when the nervous system is having an effect. Then you have biomechanics issues, right? Neck rotation not rotating well, maybe mechanically with the jaw. And then we get into the neural side with the reflux, C1, the nerves that come off that, what they affect. Now we're having all these different issues. And if we're having stress turned on, their nervous system does not fire up as well, what I call the brake pedal, or it's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And if we're not stimulating that, specifically the vagus nerve, vagal tone is what we like to say, now all of a sudden, this is when we can see digestion, immune, and all these things start to happen. And this is where we get reflux start to kick in, and it's more. Like I said, spitting up is not a bad thing. It happens, especially in formula-fed babies. You'll see it a little bit more. But it's one of the things where there's a certain range of how much you should have and shouldn't have. And ideally, you want to have it see it minimized as much as possible. So when you're not seeing that happen, when you're seeing more spit up and you're seeing a lot happening often, these are signs of active reflux. These are signs that maybe air is getting kept in. There's not a good latch. There's not a good hold. And this is where the chiropractic side, we can help because we get to the root cause. And then this is where I always will refer out to a lactation consultant so they can look at the other things that they do really, really well to make sure we're getting all that, because baby will build up patterns very quickly, muscle patterns, nerve memory to things. And we need to do the work to break them out of that also. And that's why chiropractic with a lactation consultant is phenomenal in that realm, because then we can really address the help the baby have the most successful latch, the most successful breastfeed. I'm speaking breastfeeding here. Breastfeeding. There's also for formula. There's things that you can do too there with different bottles and stuff like that. These things still happen even in formula fed babies, because if they're not grabbing and holding and doing all the things they need to do when they're going to feed, this can add more air, which creates more reflux, creates more other issues that will show up. And the same mechanics still play a role in the bottle feeding just as much as breastfeeding. But this is where they can come in. And this is where we then, and I say we, one, these are not permanent. They don't stay forever. With the kiddo we worked with, we had cranial stuff we had to work on. We were looking at, we saw the jaw was imbalanced. We saw various things. Now we do cranial work. It's not craniosacral. It's cranial work, which we're looking at the skull itself. And we're looking at specific, your skull is like the earth with tectonic plates. And so you have something called the frontal bone here. And you have so many other ones, occipital and all the occiput. There's different parts of the skull, parietal, and so much more. And so what we look at though, is we see how are they positioned, what's going on. Sometimes they rotate. Sometimes one forehead will be forward more than the other. Sometimes we'll see with eyes come down like this, which means there's something going on the side of the head there. And however that's presenting, that all plays a role in the jaw too. And so if we have a depressed frontal bone, which means it's pushed down, that jams into the jaw. And now the jaw doesn't move well, right? And if we have a head turn like this, now all of a sudden we have mechanics of the jaw not working well. And now they're getting trained over time. Every time they feed and do things, that's how they're going to adapt. And so this is critical because this affects brain development to the full potential of what they can experience. And so we want to make sure the input side's coming in as well, just as importantly. But these things aren't permanent. We worked on this kiddo with all the cranial work. We did chiropractic care. We focused on those things. And we had a couple. There was a primitive reflex that wasn't firing well either. We do a lot of primitive and posture reflexes, and so we reconditioned that back up to get it where it needed to be. And we saw reflex start to go away. And then all of a sudden, feeding experiences were great, latching beautifully within just a few adjustments. And we usually hear that often. And it was one of those things where then moms, you could see as each visit, I could see that energy coming back, that light coming back on. And she was just feeling better. And she actually was like, well, if he's having all this, what about me? And I was like, yes, we'll talk about you. Let's get you in. Mom, you need care just as much. But this is where, when we look at pediatric care, the thing about chiropractic is it's so subtle. It's so gentle. Like the approach that we take, especially for infants, it's a very, very, what we call sustained contact. We're just holding on to an area of what we're trying to adjust. And we're just trying to feel either a shift energetically, or actually the bone will feel a movement and shift, and we'll feel muscles start to relax and so forth. And with infants, their muscles are so much easier to feel than adults. So we can feel subtle changes so nice and easy with that. But like I said, not just with this kiddo, but we've had others too. I've had a kiddo who had failure to thrive because he was spitting up everything. And it was 3 months. He was still the same birth weight. And mom was like, they're getting a little concerned, and this and that. We've tried the meds. They're not working. They don't know what to do. We've tried the whole medical route. And I said, well, let's get to work. 3 months later, I think he almost tripled his weight. If you saw him now, he's built like a tank. And I just love it. And to see the shift and change and see the stress off mom in that process was amazing. And again, it's simple, specific approach, gentle chiropractic, getting to the root cause. And then we can add other things into the mix, right? Lactation consultants, things like that. If there's other imbalances, we look at other things that we can do to possibly refer to help maximize the process as much as we possibly can. But chiropractic is really, really the root cause of that. Especially with the kiddo, like I said, they tried the lactation consultant, they tried different holds and positioning, they did all the things that they could possibly do, and the kiddo just kept spitting up. I mean, it was just projectile almost. Some days he'll keep some down, some days he didn't, but 3 months worth of this, and mom's like, I'm literally just giving milk and seeing it just go. And I was just like, I feel your frustration. I get it. That would annoy me. That would frustrate me. So I understand where you are, right? And if you're a mom hearing this, I get it. It is frustrating. I'm a type A driver person. So when I do something, I want to achieve it and see a result. I'm going to see that happen. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to be recalibrating things, figure out what do I need to do to make that happen. Especially if it comes to like my kids. Oh, you better believe it. And so I get that. But here's the thing, where we look at things it's normal to have that stress. It's normal to get frustrated when the feeding isn't working. But you also have to trust your instincts. When you know that you feel something that isn't right, it probably isn't. I can't tell you how many times I always tell moms, I'll tell them, your mother, that natural intuition that you have within you, I don't care how much I know or what I've seen. I'll trust that over anything. If a mom tells me, hey, this is what my intuition's kind of telling me, this is just a gut feeling, it's something deep in me that I just feel, now so let's go with it. And like, yeah, but I don't know if that's true. I'm trusting it. And I need you to trust it too. And we work through that. And it's usually they're right. I don't know how many times a mom has told me, I always felt like there was something wrong, but I just couldn't figure out what. And it was frustrating me. And the doctors would tell me it was fine. I went here, said it was fine. Here it was fine. But I still felt like something was wrong. And I didn't know what to do. And then we did the work. And I said, here's what we have to work on. We got to get this nervous system back in balance. We have to get the range of motion and that C1 to move properly, get the head turns. They need this for development. The most crucial thing for infants, brain development, is motion. And if they have limited motion in their spine, which is the most crucial, the most important motion is in the spine. 70% that feeds the brain comes from the spine of motion. If there's limited motion there, then stress is turned down the nervous system. It's not like they're going to show signs of this. You have it and I have it too, but we don't show signs of it all the time. It doesn't come up till later. And that's why when I work with infants when there's newborns, literally brand newborns, just came out of the womb just within that day or a couple days. Mom's like, when can I bring my kid in? I said, well, if you have anything going on, let's get him in now. if there's not really a whole lot going on, let's just the things settle for 2 weeks, because things will start to work out and we'll start to see what's actually happening. Right. And then we start to see what has to work on. Like my daughter was just born a little over a month ago, my second. And as she was born, my wife's like, okay, when I adjusted her, and I'm like, she'll get adjusted immediately. I'm like, but I wasn't so like, chiropractors are like, my son or daughter was born, I adjusted them in the first 5 minutes of their life. I'm like, I told my wife, enjoy your time with this one. Just soak it in. We'll get her adjusted eventually. I think it was a couple hours later. I was like, let me give her a little adjustment before everybody can get some rest and sleep, and we'll get revitalized here. And so I did. And then my wife was like, when are we going to start this? And I was like, hey, you know what? Let's see how things work itself out. We'll adjust. It's my kid. I'm going to do it. But I also I was always looking like, okay, what's going to be showing up as we go along? And there was some little stuff that showed up here and there. And there's some things I knew we were going to have to work on already, just because of the birth process of what went on and the labor and all that. So I already knew ahead of time, like, okay, here's some of the work I'm already going to have to do. But I'm going to wait a little bit on that to see how it works itself out a little bit, so we can see. Because once I know, like, hey, 2 weeks in, this is when you usually start to see stuff. And we did, but now we're correcting it and it's clearing out already. It's pretty quick. So it's the stuff that, you don't have to push through. Babies are designed to thrive. Your body's designed to thrive. And the key is we want the solutions always exist. And I will tell you why I know this. This is a quantum principle. I think it's a universal principle too, but a law. If the problem exists, the solution has to exist. I want you to understand that. That is law. It's called the law of polarity. There are opposites to things. There cannot be a problem without the solution. I want you to really grasp that. Okay, so no matter what comes in life, with health, this crosses all boards, but we're going to keep this in the kiddo side. So if a kid having a latching issue, a feeding issue, or something like that, there's a solution to that. There's a reason behind it, and there's a solution. We don't need to force it. That's what I love about chiropractic. I'm not forcing anything. I'm removing interference in that nervous system so the communication between the brain and body can communicate better. That gives good input into that brain. Now, from there's a cascade effect of things that are going to happen. Because as a chiropractor, I don't treat anything. There's no adjustment for reflux. There's no adjustment for poor latch or stuff. There's no adjustment for back pain or headaches. Can I help with those things? Yeah, but my adjustment is not focused on that. My adjustment is focused on the nervous system, how it's communicating and how it's functioning. And if I can improve the communication and function of that nervous system, guess what? Everything else starts to function better in the body. And if we're stimulating for kiddos more range of motion, or healthier range of motion, that feeds the brain better. It turns off stress. They can go more into that vagal tone. This is when kids can be more regulated, especially infants. And then they sleep better. I can't tell how many times I do an adjustment first time on an infant, and I'll tell parents, hey, nap time might go a little longer. Sleep might be a little bit longer too, just a heads up. And I'll never forget the story. I shared this with a mom. It was their sixth kiddo she had. And I told her when I gave him the first adjustment, it was within the first few days, I said, he may sleep a little deeper. So it was like 5 days in, I believe. All of a sudden, we do the adjustment. I get a text the next day. She's like, Dr. Vic, I know you told me he was going to sleep deeper. He slept for 7 hours. I felt so bad. I had to do dream feeding. He was just resting and resetting. And here's a mom who did a home birth. She did all the things. And yet, again, it's lowering the probabilities, but baby had some stuff that she just felt she knew he needed an adjustment. And we went ahead, did the adjustment. And she was like, this is mind blowing. And then she was like, feeding was a little bit better. He's sleeping deeper now. Like he goes and feeds and goes right to sleep, poops, eats, sleeps. And I was like, that's what he should be doing right now. And I'm like, you're a veteran at this. This is number 6 for you. But she was just like, it's cool. It's amazing to see it because the first 5 didn't have that. This one did. And she's like, when he gets adjusted, it's just amazing how well he sleeps. And again, it's just all stimulating back to brake pedal, restoring growth and development, all those things. Okay. So you don't have to push through. There's no complicated things when it comes to health. I mean, there shouldn't be. Health is simple, really. And somebody say, well, you make it so simplified. No, I don't. Because when you study the greatest athletes in the world, they focus on the foundations. That's it. They don't focus on all these advanced things. They focus on the foundations and get really good with that. When something's off, they go back to the foundations. When something's up, they always go back. I've seen it every single time. And it's the same thing in health. It's simple. Nervous system first. Well, what about all these other things? Let's go nervous system first. Why? Because it takes care of everything. It works on everything. Every facet of life, even your life itself. And from there, That's when we can help these kiddos thrive. And that's why I'm so passionate about being a pediatric chiropractor and all the training that I've done in that. So, and I'm going to be taking more extensive training now in pediatrics, just because I really, really want to. How can I help, and how can I go farther? How can I go further? Because what I've been seeing as a chiropractor is there's more things that need to be looked at now, just because of where we are in life. And so that's the beauty of what pediatric chiropractic can do, especially if you have any lactation issues, anything when it comes to the feeding issues and things along that nature. Chiropractic works. I've seen it over and over and over. I cannot tell you. Moms who've had painful feedings to where nipples are sore all the time, and they're putting every cream they could possibly have, nipple shields and all these other things on there to try all this stuff. And then all of a sudden we start adjusting, and they notice just a little different, subtle difference, a subtle difference, a subtle difference, little bit at a time. Next thing you know, they don't need the shield anymore. Next thing you know, they're not having painful feedings anymore. They don't have cracked nipples or bleeding nipples or things like that that lead to that. So I've worked with a lot of moms with this stuff, and it's amazing to see that, where they could see it actually. Wow, I had cracked nipple issues and this going on and all this, and now all of a sudden it's less and less. And they're like, I'm working with a lactation consultant. We're working on all things to try to work around that, but I know the chiro has to be doing something with it. And I heard this from my mom recently. And so just understanding when it comes to feeding your baby, whether it's bottle or breast, which I'm more of a component of breastfeeding. There's just the research shows a lot of support in that in many ways for mom, nutrient development, on demand, what they need, all these different things. But I'm not against formula feeding either. It's there for a reason also. So whichever way that you're doing this, but just know it's supposed to be a time of joy. Connection should be for stress. It's together. We can help make that not only just possible, but we can help you to thrive in many ways when it comes to that experience, not just for you, but for baby, and the oxytocin releasing and the connection with your baby and the bond that is so critical, especially early on, that you want to create, especially for mom, to create that. So then baby knows neurologically they have a safe place to go to, which is mom. I mean, even in my family unit, as much as I would love to be that person, my wife is the one. Right? My daughter's upset. I'll try to comfort her. I want to hug her. I want to be there for her, support her, whatever she's going through, work through the emotions with her. But I can tell you, it's mama. It's just mama. We can have a moment. And I know guys go through this. Husbands, they go through this. We'll have a moment of something that happened. And we get through it. We work through it emotionally. And then about a half hour later, we get home. And she'll see mom and start crying and yelling and all this. And my wife will be like, did you guys have a bad time? I'm like, no, we had a great time. She had something that happened, but we worked through it and worked through her emotions, and we were fine. But she didn't really get to reset it all, get it all out of her nervous system. And that's what mom was for. So that bond's very, very critical and important. So I highly, one last, as we wrap things up here, if you want to see what chiropractic can do for your kiddo, reach out to us. I have my link in the show notes. We do everything by text messaging or email. So the book appointments, and if you have questions, if you are curious and you want to talk on the phone or connect first, we can do that also. But all the information will be in the show notes for you to connect with us. We have offices in Knoxville, Morristown, and Maryville as of right now. And so we can connect and we can help you, give you the peace of mind that you need, and know that we can turn this around. And I can't tell you, before I wrap this up, there's another kiddo I've been working with who had really severe reflux, and he was bottle fed. And it's one of those things where within a month, parents were noticing it was down by under 50%, like it improved by 50%. There's like, it's so much less. Now, 3 months into care, they'll have a spit up from here to there, but they'll go, it was on us. We overfed them. We knew it. And we were trying to just get more in. And yeah, it backfired. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm like, but notice he's got a good reflux up with nothing. Happy baby, this and that, all these things. So it's one of those things where we can help and we can really get to that point. So if you have any questions, you can email us, text us. If you want to hop on a call and you want to learn a little bit more with your situation and what's going on and see if we can help, you can definitely do it. We'll set it up via text message or email, and then we'll book it, figure out a time to connect, and then we'll definitely connect with you. So want to appreciate you taking the time to tune in. My name is Dr. Vic Manzo. This is the Wellness Path Podcast, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.